I welcome to Morning Rush this morning Jimmiel Mandima. He's the Vice President, Global Programs Institutional Giving International Fund for Animal Welfare. Jimmy, welcome to Morning Rush, sir.
Thank you, Andy. Pleasure to be here.
I think, as I said in the beginning, everybody's talking about temperature rises, temperature increases. They're looking at it from that perspective, very much from a human perspective, agreed? But we forget that there's billions and billions of animals out there. In fact, without animals, we don't eat chicken, we don't eat beef, we don't eat goat meat. I mean, apart from that, the animals are so critical to us. So talk to us, first of all, about why climate change is a major threat, not only, of course, to humans, but also, of course, to wildlife.
Andy, that's a very important point, and let me start by just introducing who we are. The International Fund for Animal Welfare is celebrating 55 years of working across 40 countries worldwide. And we work on rescuing individual animals that are often victims of extreme weather events and climate. And we work on combating wildlife crime where the animals are being stolen by illegal, illicit markets. And we work at trying to invest in landscape conservation like Wange, places that are in fact the platforms on which ecosystems that are healthy to give good quality life are working well. And we work in the marine environment as well. So across everything and response to disasters. So when there's drought, when there are floods, when there are fires, IFAW is there. But that work depends on invitations by government, by local communities, working with private sectors. Now, climate.
Well, before you move on, who's behind IFAW?
IFAW is well-wishers from across the world.
Okay, so this is individual people putting money. This isn't government, it isn't huge aid
individuals, the governments that partner between the global north and the global south, the private sector, everybody.
Good.
And it could be money, it could be sending the word, raising awareness, offering your technical expertise in any sphere, because it's all very complex.
Okay. Well, let's talk climate change and wildlife. Okay, we talk a lot about humans, and that's obviously important because we are humans, but talk about the impact of climate change on wildlife.
The situation is grim. The habitats have shrunk. The proper climate models are purely showing us that there are going to be areas that will be drier, some that will be too wet, and any extreme means that we are not able to sustain the functionality of the ecosystems that host these important wildlife resources. Now, if that balance is disturbed, there will be opportunistic, invasives that take over the systems. And animals die. They try to move in search for water. And as that happens, there's competition with human populations that also subsist on the same thing. And more important, the clean air that we need is not going to be there. And more of the high temperature rise means carbon emissions because of the deforestation. So all this has become combined, and what we need to do now is to say, how do we resolve this using the resources that we're endowed with?
Well, that's exactly my question, because I know IFAW, your organization, is advocating for nature-based solutions to climate change. So I suppose the question then comes, what are these nature-based solutions, and what role can wildlife and nature play in mitigating the impact or the effects of climate change?
It's a very low-hanging fruit. Nature-based solutions essentially says if we protect, if we conserve, and we restore the natural functional ecosystems, which is the trees, the grasses, the soils, and the wildlife, and they are balanced, we are able to sequester, which is to keep and hold the carbon from being emitted and heating up the atmosphere.
I see. Okay, so wildlife management and effective management of it obviously has a positive impact on.
And we already have that.
Right.
So we don't need to buy anything which is artificial.
What happens, and this is something I suppose a lot of people don't understand, and this is the issue of culling of elephants, And I know we have too many. Unfortunately, I mean, I know it sounds weird to say we have too many elephants. I even remember the Botswana president said, was it Botswana? He said he would send 60,000 elephants to Germany because they mustn't complain about conservation. They must take the elephants there. But I mean, how does that work? Because we have too many elephants, and I'm sure your role is to save animals, but culling actually gets rid of animals because of the overness, the overburden of animal population. Is that an issue? Can you marry the two issues off?
What we have realized that over the last 100+ years, the elephant population, for example, have plummeted from more than 1 million to about less than 500,000 now.
That's throughout the whole of Southern Africa, is it?
The whole of Africa.
Africa. Huh.
And then the habitat for elephants, the places where they subsist and which are suitable for them, has shrunk from to a third of the size. So when we come to the elephant population, which is so small now, Africa-wide, and the need for it to exist healthy and viable to sequester the carbon, what we are doing as an organization is to work with the governments that are parties to international conventions to say, how do we secure existing suitable habitats and allow movement of elephants? So where, for example, there could be higher densities in a particular area, but we know these are megafauna that are able to move, which is part of the reason why SADC as a region, to their own wisdom, is the CASA TFCA, Trans-Frontier Conservation Area. Elephants can move from Zimbabwe into Botswana, from Botswana to Zimbabwe. So that room to roam, securing space for them to move.
Talk to us about that room to roam initiative that IFAW is.
So the room to roam initiative is looking to saying, if we look at the various core areas that are parks for wildlife and elephants as the main flagship, they are isolated, they are disconnected, yet elephants want to move. So room to roam is simply negotiating with the governments, with the community landowners and the private sector landowners to say, allow to set aside pieces of land that elephants can move in other wildlife so they can follow where the water is on a seasonal basis. And then that allows us to sustain viable elephant populations that then help to manage as a climate action. So it involves working with communities, but the other part of the equation is, it's not just for the animals alone, it's the animals and people thriving together. So the food production systems have to also be equally invested in as part of room to roam. Do we do climate smart agriculture to be able to ensure that we are efficient with water use? Do we ensure that the chiefs, the local communities have a voice to co-design what we set aside? And finally, what businesses would come out of having viable elephant population there for wildlife that communities are benefiting from through employment, through being co-owners of the business.
Because of elephants is only one portion. I mean, you've got lions, lions, cheetahs, leopards, ostriches. I mean, we can go on and on. So it's all wildlife here. Wow, I mean, I tell you what, though, the number that shook me right now was only 500,000 elephants in Africa. I mean, that is like nothing.
Yes.
And most of those are in Southern Africa, if I think about it. Maybe at least 3/4 are in Southern Africa.
So when we look at Southern Africa, which is why Zimbabwe is special and the whole of the region, almost 3/4 of those elephants are in Southern Africa and a bit of them in East Africa. So room to roam is connecting the African savanna landscapes in Southern Africa and East Africa to secure as much of what is suitable habitats for coexistence.
I like that. No, I really do. I mean, now you're implementing a 25-year MOU with Zimparks. Talk about that and very briefly, because unfortunately we have to wind up. And what is your commitment towards this MOU going forward? What actually does it entail?
Our commitment relates to making sure that the science and research to make sure that the wildlife is well protected is up to speed.
So empirical evidence.
To ensure that the ranger welfare, which is critical for the men and women in the front lines, is up to speed, which is ranger houses, accommodation, the facilities for transportation, to ensure that communities that are on the buffer areas within parks, where wildlife goes, they've got the best available way of food production, water provision, and to ensure that over time we're able to deal with combating wildlife crime, which is investing in anti-poaching, investing in anti-trafficking of the illicit products, and also sensitizing on the side of the market, together with the government of Zimbabwe, on reducing the demand for these illicit products so that the government can benefit from that. 25 years is because it takes many years to be able to really have impact over time, build capacity so that Zimparks and the government of Zimbabwe can run with it because they have the authority and the mandate to do this.
And I'm assuming that you, of course, your organization supports the ban on ivory sales, I'm assuming, right? What is your view on that? Because there's so much stock in Botswana, here, Namibia.
So that's a good question. That's a state discussion. There are parties, they negotiate sovereign states. We work on issues that the government invites us to support, aligned with that, so we don't get involved
in
the
I see, because then you're getting into political questions.
Yeah.
Jimmiel, thank you so much, sir.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Keep up the good work. Guys, IFAW is there. You can find their website, contact them, and I'm sure they'll take donations from individuals. You know what they're for. They're here looking at wildlife conservation and also, of course, what we're spoken about now with Jimmiel Mandima. He's the Vice President, Global Programs and Institutional Giving at the International Fund for Animal Welfare. I think you can get that at IFAW, IFAW, IFAW.org is the website if you want to get involved in that. But as I said, let me leave you with the shocking statistic, which I got shocked by. There used to be 1 million elephants. Now, today, there's only 500,000 elephants, and their habitat has shrunk to 1/3 of what it was before. If those aren't words of warning, I don't know what are.
Konapo, Ipapo pa ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.